left to die in the desert, but the human mechanic shielded the baby alien dragons with his life. The desert of Kalar stretched endlessly, a cruel expanse of ochre sands and jagged rock spires that caught the last dying light of its twin suns. Heat shimmered above the dunes, bending the horizon like molten glass. There was no wind, only silence broken by the occasional hiss of shifting grains. It was a place where men were sent to vanish, whether by fate, accident, or deliberate cruelty. Dax Rayner knew this all too well. He lay half buried in the burning sand, his mechanic's jacket torn and crusted with dust, his breathing shallow. Just hours ago, though it already felt like days, he had been working on a convoy freighter, coaxing life from its whining engines. But his employers, the Black Talon Syndicate, had discovered that he had tried to smuggle out a group of enslaved workers hidden in supply crates. His punishment had been swift and merciless. They dragged him from the freighter's underbelly, beat him bloody, and dumped him from a hover skiff into the dead center of the desert. No water, no food, no chance. You want to save lives, Rayner? Their captain had spat. Then save your own, if you can. The engines had roared, the skiff had vanished, and he had been left to die. The beginning, the cries beneath the sand. Time had blurred since then. Dax drifted in and out of consciousness, his mind swaying between fevered dreams and despair. The suns beat down on him like a hammer. His throat felt like cracked leather. His lips had split, bleeding slowly into the sand. He no longer thought of rescue, only death. But then, a sound. At first, he thought it was hallucination, a faint chirping, high-pitched and desperate, carried on the still air. He blinked grit from his eyes, turning his head weakly. The sound came again, closer this time, muffled. He dragged himself forward, each movement agony. The sand burned his palms, searing like hot metal. Still he clawed, pulling himself toward the faint cries. His fingers struck something softer than stone. He dug with trembling hands, grain spilling between his nails. And there, beneath a thin layer of sand, was a nest. For small, leathery eggshells cracked open. Inside them, curled like fragile jewels, were creatures, tiny reptilian, each with translucent wings pressed to their backs and scales that shimmered faintly with iridescence. Their eyes, oversized and glowing faintly blue, blinked up at him. Baby Drakkar. Dax's heart lurched. He'd heard rumors of a Drakkar, alien dragons thought to be extinct after centuries of poaching. Their scales fetched fortunes on the black market. Their wings were ground into powders for illicit medicine. Finding even a clutch of unhatched eggs was enough to spark wars between syndicates. But here, somehow, against all odds, for had been born, and they were crying, helpless and afraid. Dax stared at them. He could barely keep himself alive, yet here were 4 more lives placed suddenly in his broken hands. He should have left them, let nature finish what the desert began. Instead, something deep in him stirred, a mechanic's instinct to protect what was fragile, to keep what was broken alive. No one's left to die today, he rasped. His voice cracked from thirst. Not you, not me. The middle, shield of flesh and will. The first challenge was the heat. The newborn Drakkar's translucent skin blistered quickly in the suns. Their cries grew shrill as they wriggled against the sand. Without shade, they would wither before nightfall. Dax dragged himself upright, swaying like a drunk. His jacket, what remained of it, was heavy canvas, patched with burn marks from years of engine work. He shrugged it off, teeth gritted against the pain, and spread it carefully over the nest. The fabric shielded them from the worst of the sun's wrath. Better me than you, he muttered. The twin sun scorching his exposed back. Through the long hours of the afternoon, he sat hunched like a human canopy. His skin blistered, sweat evaporating before it could cool him. His throat was raw, his vision spotted with black. The little dragons stirred beneath the jacket, chirping softly, their tiny bodies pressing against his side, as if sensing his warmth. When night came, the desert turned cruel in a different way. The heat bled away into bone-deep cold. Dax shivered violently, but the hatchlings needed warmth to survive. He gathered them into his arms, curling around them. Their scales glowed faintly in the starlight, and their fragile wings trembled as they burrowed against his chest. The desert winds howled, carrying the sound of predators in the distance. Dax held the babies tighter, whispering words he barely understood. It's all right. I've got you. I'll keep you safe. He had nothing, no food, no water, no weapons. Only his body, his will, and his stubborn refusal to let innocent life die under his watch. Days bled together. He scoured the desert for anything he could find. Small lizards skittered beneath the rocks. He crushed them gently, feeding slivers to the hatchlings. They resisted at first, then devoured hungrily. He found cactus-like plants, slicing them open with shard of stone, drinking the bitter fluid and letting the dragons lap at the moisture. Every night, he became their shield. His arms grew covered in cuts from their tiny claws, his body thinner by the day. Yet each morning, he woke to their growing chirps, their glowing eyes watching him with recognition. A strange bond formed. When he moved, they followed. When he collapsed, they pressed against him, their scales warming with faint heat. One, slightly larger than the others, with emerald streaks down its spine, climbed off into his shoulder as if to scout the horizon. Dax named that one ember. By the 7th day, the hatchlings were already larger. Their wings stretched wider, shimmering in sunlight. Their cries had grown stronger, almost musical. But so had the danger. On the 8th day, the raiders came. The clash in the sands. Dax spotted them first as black specks on the horizon, hoverbikes slicing across the dunes. At least 5, maybe 6. His heart froze. Raiders. Scavengers who stripped corpses for valuables, who would kill for less than a drop of water. And if they saw the Drakkar, "Quiet now," Dax whispered, shoving the hatchlings beneath the folds of his jacket. He pressed himself against the dune, praying the sands would conceal him. But luck had long since abandoned him. The riders swung in a wide arc, circling. Engines snarled. A voice crackled through a modulator. Well, what we have here? A corpse that forgot to lie down. Dax stood slowly, arms raised. "Just a mechanic," he croaked. "No threat to you." The leader dismounted, sauntering closer. His armor was pieced together from scrap metal, his eyes hidden behind goggles. "No threat. Eh? Out here, nothing lives long without reason. What are you hiding?" One raider kicked at the sand near Dax's feet. A chirp escaped from under the jacket. The leader froze. Then a slow, greedy smile spread across his face. "Well, look at that. You've been babysitting." He yanked the jacket aside. The hatchlings hissed, wings flaring, eyes glowing bright in fear. The raiders gasped. Even hardened men knew what they were seeing. Wealth beyond imagination. "Drakkar," one whispered. "By the void." Dax moved before he thought. He lunged, arms wide, shielding the babies with his body. "You're not touching them." The raiders laughed, raising rifles. "Step aside, old man. We'll make it quick." But Dax did not move. He spread himself taller, broken as he was, a living shield of flesh and will. "If you want them, you'll have to kill me first." The leader sneered. "Gladly." Shots rang. Sand exploded around him. Dax braced, then a roar split the air. Ember burst from beneath his arm, wings snapping open with a thunderclap. The hatchling had grown stronger than Dax realized. Its scales shimmered like molten metal as it spat a sudden jet of fire that engulfed the nearest raider. Chaos erupted. Raiders screamed, stumbling back as 2 more hatchlings leapt free, their cries turning into shrieks that rattled the dunes. Flames licked the sky. Dax stood among them, stunned, watching the impossible. The babies it shielded now shielding him. The raiders fled, their bikes screaming into the distance, leaving only scorched sand and silence behind. Dax collapsed to his knees, clutching Ember against his chest. His body was failing, but his heart burned fierce. He had kept his promise. The ending, wings of salvation. Dax did not remember falling. He only remembered waking to warmth, not the burning suns, but something gentler. He opened his eyes to find the hatchlings surrounding him, larger now, their wings spanning wide enough to cast shade. Ember nudged him with a scaled snout, eyes glowing bright with something that felt almost like concern. "You're still here," Dax whispered. The dragons chirped. Then, astonishingly, Ember lowered itself, wings spread. It wanted him to climb. With what little strength he had left, Dax hauled himself onto its back. The hatchling crouched, then leapt. Wings beat with thunderous force, lifting them skyward. The desert shrank below, a graveyard of sand and stone. For the first time in days, Dax felt wind cool against his burned skin. He clutched the creature's neck, laughing hoarsely through cracked lips. The other hatchlings followed, soaring in a small formation. They carried him across the dunes, past the jagged spires, toward the distant shimmer of an oasis, a place Dax had never thought he'd reach alive. When they landed, water gleamed crystal clear. Dax slid off Ember's back, collapsing into shallows. He drank until his stomach ached, the dragon splashing beside him. Tears blurred his eyes. He had been left to die in the desert, abandoned and broken, yet in saving the helpless, he had been saved in return. As night fell, The dragons huddle close, their wings wrapping around him like living blankets. Dax stared at the stars overhead, whispering to himself, "Not left to die. Not anymore."